You've come to the right place if you're looking to create, launch, and scale a high-value online training program. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS, the most powerful learning management system for WordPress. Stay to the end. I've got something special for you. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a special guest. His name is Tim McIvor. He's from schoolpsych.com. He's a creator. He's doing a lot of cool things in the education space. We're going to get into his story. We're going to learn about the impact he's making, how he's using LifterLMS. But first, welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I love seeing people find success and build cool platforms. Can you tell us what schoolpsych.com is all about?
Absolutely. It's a professional development platform for school psychologists to renew their license through my recorded webinars. So basically, there is a National Association of School Psychologists, and they give out different accreditation system where you can become a provider, an approved provider for this national association. And then once you get that, like schoolpsych.com currently has that, once you get that, you can provide certificates that school psychologists can then use to renew their license. So it's all built around this system of school psychologists needing these certificates in order to renew their license.
Is the license something they have to renew every year or like every 3
Every
years?
3
How does it work?
years. And they
Every
need
3 years?
75 hours of professional development.
Wow, that's awesome. And is this,
Yeah.
I don't know the industry really well. Is this like all public school psychologists need this, or how does that work?
So pretty much all public school psychologists need this if they are considered a nationally certified school psychologist. And school psychologists are very motivated to be nationally certified school psychologists because it's an important credential to have for getting good jobs. And then on top of that, you usually get a stipend for having that nationally certified credential. It's not technically necessary to work in public schools. It can just, there's a lot of benefits to having it, getting better jobs, getting stipends.
Very cool. And just to better understand the industry, correct me if I'm wrong, but not every public school has a school psychologist. Like where do they operate, or do they? Does every school have a school
Yeah,
psychologist?
it's something we get a lot because we kind of go on behind the scenes. So although not every school has a full-time, 5 days a week school psychologist, for every single public school in the United States, there is a school psychologist assigned to that school. For me personally, for the past 10 years, I've worked at 3 schools, and so it's always been 2 days at one school, 2 days at another school, and one day at the last school. So yeah, we're kind of behind the scenes. As students, they might not know who I am unless they work directly with me, and so they might feel like they don't have a school psychologist or they don't have this because we are typically assigned to multiple schools.
That's awesome. And just to better understand what school psychologists do, like what are some of the most common psychological issues that the industry helps with in the United States?
So basically, we're not the school counselors who are doing all like the counseling and all the scheduling and all the help with the school college applications. We're doing the special education evaluations. We're doing all the testing. We're writing up reports and determining if students qualify for services. So our job is very rewarding in that sense, in that we are directly able to work with students who are referred to us, test them on these different tests that we've been trained on, and determine whether they qualify for additional services under different special education categories that they might qualify under, such as a learning disability, autism. There's ADHD, it counts under the other health impairment category. And then, of course, we do more than this job, but as far as the primary role, I would say is the special education testing. But of course, we do a lot of consultation with teachers, crisis prevention, data analysis, and so on and so forth.
Awesome. Well, tell us your story, because it sounds like were a school psychologist, but you decided to get into the the education side to meet the need of continuing education. How did you make that turn, or what inspired you to get involved in education for certification and all that?
Yeah, it started in graduate school where I was kind of asking around how do you get the best jobs in school psychology? And one of the head people of the Boston Public Schools told me that if you volunteer in a professional development association, and she was referring to the Massachusetts School Psychologists Association specifically, you would be able to network very well. That would be one of the best ways to be able to get a good job. And she was absolutely right. People were able to pull strings for me to get jobs that were in demand. But that actually ended up being only one benefit. The other benefit is I got to learn how a professional development association works in school psychology. And then when I went out to Nevada, after I got a job out there, they didn't have one of these state associations, but because I had done all that volunteer work for for Massachusetts, I helped create one with about five other very passionate school psychologists, and we created the Nevada Association of School Psychologists as a nonprofit, and we basically helped the state run a whole bunch of professional development conferences. It's still going strong to this day, and I was the president of it from its inception for the first 2 years, and that's when I really learned how to build a professional development association from the ground up.
Wow, that's very cool. And how long ago was that you set out to build
That
the association?
that was 2014, and that was actually as my first year as a school psychologist. I was doing that, and so I was the president of an entire state simultaneously while being a first year school psychologist. I'm probably the only person to ever do something like that. It was just crazy, but people had a lot of respect for me for doing it, and I was obviously very motivated, hardworking, and it worked out very well.
That's awesome. I'm guessing you were, well, in this industry of continuing education, did you start by delivering it at in-person, like
Yes.
continuing ed events?
Yeah, I did the traditional route the entire time I was president, just doing these in-person conferences. But I knew that, with go-to training, go-to webinar type platforms, you could totally do it live, and it would make it so much easier than having to book a venue. Plus, Nevada's such a rural state in so many parts that for them to all have to fly to one place for professional development didn't seem very smart. So after those 2 years as president, I started looking into how we could make it more accessible for that nonprofit. And I was also taking notes for my own to create a business. And that's exactly what I did. The year after I was president in 2017, I created a business where I was launching live webinars on GoToWebinar, on GoToTraining. But I noticed that after the webinar, I wanted somewhere where we had these recordings to put it up for people who missed the training, who missed the webinar. And that's where LifterLMS came into play.
That's awesome. So what was your history with WordPress? Was this your first WordPress site, or were you already kind of using it for something else?
No, I actually had built like 5 websites by then.
Okay.
I'm one of those crazy people who graphic design is just a passion of mine. And so, like, any chance I could get to build a website, like, for example, during my internship year, I was like the tennis coach for the high school tennis team. And I was like, let's build a website. Like, I would find any reason under the sun to build a website. And so I just love building websites. And I knew it would be good because I knew I wanted to get into the business aspect of school psychology eventually. And so, yeah, I did have a little bit of a background with WordPress prior to this.
So tell us about the story of how you decided to use Lifter LMS. Sometimes people
Sure.
get a little overwhelmed with like all the LMSs out there, and there's this decision fatigue and like figuring out which tools or plugins to use. Tell us about how you figured that out and ended up with
Sure.
Lifter.
I remember watching a YouTube video in early 2017 about how to create an LMS platform. and it was literally the first YouTube video I looked up was by a guy named Adam, and I'm trying to remember the name of his platform. It was like WP something.
Crafter, I
W
think.
Crafter. Thank
Yeah.
you, WP
Yeah.
Crafter.
Yeah.
Awesome guy. Created a great video. I think he now owns Presto. You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome
Presto
guy.
player.
Really appreciated his videos. Never talked to him or met him in person, but I could just tell he's a very upbeat, nice guy. And he showed step by step how to use LifterLMS and how to set it up. And I was sold. I didn't actually have to look at any other platform. I did later just because somebody else who I collaborated with, who wasn't good with technical skills, wanted a platform, and I helped her find Rizuku and Kajabi and things like that. But
Yeah.
for me, I felt very strongly that right from the get-go that LifterLMS checked all the boxes, and there were a lot of boxes to check because the National Association, in order to be an approved provider and give these certificates for school psychologists to renew their licensure, you had to have quizzes, you had to have evaluation feedback, you had to have generated certificates. The lessons had to be structured in such a way, and everything that they required, LifterLMS had. And so I never ended up looking elsewhere. I've been kind of a loyal LifterLMS customer since 2017.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. You've been around that long. That's
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. Well, you mentioned a lot of the things like quizzes and certificates. What other features do you like most about Lifter or use the most?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like, just starting off the bat, the user friendly nature of the platform. I love how in the dashboard it just permanently stores your certificates. I can tell you that school psychologists, yes, they're interested in professional development, but ultimately they're most interested in just making sure they get those certificates and that they can find them 3 years down the road when they are looking to renew their license. And so for them to see that it's all just stored with the name of the certificate, the date, and just how easy it is to auto generate these certificates on my end so that I don't have to email each person, really gave me an edge in creating this platform, because there are other school psychologists who tried to do this type of thing but didn't really know how to, because they figured, they might have to email individually the certificate. And oftentimes what these nonprofits do is after a live conference, they're, printing out certificates, having to write the name down. It's very, it takes a lot of time. It's very time consuming. But the way LifterLMS just sets all this up is very auto generated, help save me a bunch of time so I could focus on what I really care about, which is just teaching school psychologists best practices. For me, the passion is all about how can we get school psychologists the best possible training from the best possible people to make the largest amount of impact on the students we serve. And that to me is a big passion, to know that I can be part of having a major impact, not just on the 3 schools I work at, but also globally. I mean, there's school psychologists across the entire world who are using schoolpsych.com right now.
Wow, that's so cool. How do you handle the situation where, like, if you're kind of used to like a webinar or a filmed event where it's sort of like one presentation, it's not necessarily a course with multiple lessons. Are you creating like a sort of a mini course that just has like
Yeah.
one lesson per
Yeah,
course?
it's a
Is that what?
1 hour webinar, followed by
Yeah.
a quiz, followed by an evaluation feedback. And you'll see that all of my webinars are set up the same way. It's like 3 lessons, and second lesson's quiz, third lesson's evaluation feedback. But yeah, it really is just that one first lesson. That's the webinar. That's the content. I've never had to use multiple lessons. There are some features on LifterLMS I know that would be helpful for like university professors, but for me, it's just kind of simplified in that sense.
Do you do all the website stuff yourself, or does somebody help you with it?
Yeah, there were very few times where I've had to go on, what's that website called, like CodePress or something like that.
Codable?
Where, yeah, Codable, where you ask the software engineer to help you fix something, but it was never related to LibreLMS. It was related to like security and things like that, making sure my website is secure from hackers. I was having an issue with that for a bit. But yeah, for the most part, just learning things on YouTube. The one thing that I wanted to make sure I said today was that every time I would reach out to your support team since 2017, I've always gotten great responses. I've even sometimes gotten video tutorials tailored specifically to my website on how to do something, which I've never seen a company do before. I've never seen a support team that specific in helping their customers. And so that's why I'm a huge fan of LifterLMS. I think that's where you guys really stand out. You have a great product, and then just the best support team I've ever seen.
I appreciate that. We think about support like it's not a cost center to be minimized. It's actually a feature of the product.
Yeah,
So
it's
like we
fantastic.
try to go big there.
Yeah,
Um, you have like you do a lot, and that's part of your story. Like, hey, I started my first job and built an association at the same time.
yes,
But like when it comes to content creation, I guess in theory you could teach everything, but you have
sure.
other people teaching and you teach some, or tell us about how you gather and source all the material.
I think at first I thought that I could just do it all. I did 12. I was kind of broke at the time. School psychologists don't necessarily make a ton of money, so I didn't have money to pay speakers. And so the first 12 webinars I made were all me. And then I noticed that once I started reaching out to guest speakers, there was a lot more interest in the website because I specialized in technology and school psychology. And one person, I'll never forget how they explained this to me. That's like almost eating your vegetables. Like it's good for you, school psychologists should be learning about technology and school psychology, but in reality, they want kind of like the meat and potatoes. They want the behavior interventions. They want all these topics that are highly in demand that I couldn't necessarily be the expert and give them. So that's when I realized in order to truly make this website great, I needed to start reaching out. And after I had created those 12 webinars, I had just taken any money I had made from that and put it into guest speakers. And now we're up to over 50 webinars on the platform.
That's awesome. Do the webinars remain current and usable over time, or do they kind of have a shelf life?
Yeah, I would say after about 6, 7 years, some of these webinars need to either be redone or just taken off the platform. Um, and then for my technology webinars, because I did them, I could just go in and update them where needed, which I've done over the years.
If somebody's thinking about recruiting other kind of content creators, do you like pay them, or do you pay them a royalty, or are they just happy to do it to get exposure or experience?
At,
How does
at
that work?
first, at first, I was looking mostly for people who would do it for exposure. Maybe they had a book, and then there were a few school psychologists who were pretty well known, who I was just really good friends with, and they didn't mind doing it at a cheaper price. In fact, one of them I had quoted a pretty high price and said, "No, you don't have to pay me that much. I'll do it for this." Like just very nice people in general. The field of school psychology is not your typical um, textbook business people. They're just extremely nice people who are very passionate and have similar passions to mine of just wanting to get the word out of how to best help kids. But then again, there's also very high in demand speakers who I don't blame them for charging very high speaker fees because everyone is wanting them. And so it's a big range, but as my website's grown, I've been able to get speakers who are more in demand and charge a higher price. And so it's grown over time what I can pay people.
Is this become your full-time thing, or you're also still a school psychologist?
As of this uh, as of this year, I actually stopped my full time job as a school psychologist. This, along with just some part time consultation with the Boston Public Schools,
Yeah.
as well as just a few other more minor business ventures, is my full time thing. So basically, it was getting to the point where this was doing better than my full-time job as a school psychologist. And I felt like I had more impact here globally to help children. And so it just aligned with my passions. And so I had been a school psychologist for 5 years in Nevada full time, then a school psychologist for 5 years in Florida full time. And this is my first ever school year where I'm not actually in the schools anymore. So yeah, LifterLMS has helped me substantially in getting to that goal, which is just a dream of mine.
Wow, awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
How do I know people who do like professional development or are thinking about it? What they often ask, like, well, how do you get clients, or how do you get in the flow of people needing continuing education credits? Like, how did
Yeah.
you get that going, and what do you continue to do?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the areas where I think I thrive the most is the marketing component because I am competing with about 1,000 other professional development associations. There's maybe not 1,000, but there are so many different providers who provide these NASP approved certificates. There are also the APA, which is the American Psychological Association, which provides certificates, and our national association counts those as well. So if you count all the providers from the APA, then it's well over 1,000 who I'm competing against. But one way I've found to really stand out is I'm extremely active on social media.
Hmm.
I was watching a few YouTube videos, I remember back in 2020, that had said in order to stand out, you need to add humor. You can't just constantly promote your webinars. People won't like it, they won't follow you, they'll just kind of get bored of your page. But if, I mean, with a few exceptions, of course, who are super passionate about professional development, but if you can incorporate some really funny humor or really meaningful, valuable resources into your social media posts that school psychologists can find a lot of value of, and then every once in a while mention that you've got a new professional development webinar on your platform, that what has been the key to my success. I've gotten over 10,000 followers on both Facebook and Instagram that way. And they
Wow.
even in that YouTube video had mentioned like these are some of the accounts where they're using humor and they're getting like 100,000 followers. And it was like this accountant, this like a random accountant Twitter page that was using pretty good humor, and I just kind of learned how they did it and then applied it to my page.
Wow, that's cool. Is there seasonality to this continuing ed, or is it just kind of always happening? People are signing up, or do people tend to get their credits at a certain time of year or whatever?
It's all year round, but I noticed that June is a great time because it's pretty much the end of the school year. They're wrapping up the school year. The kids are out, but sometimes the school psychologists still need to work another maybe week or so without the students, and so they're getting around to all the things they wanted to do during the school year but didn't have time to, and a lot of that is professional development. Another one is August and September. At the very beginning of the school year, school psychologists don't necessarily have the busiest schedules yet because usually the teachers are still getting to know their students before referring them to the school psychologist. And there's usually a honeymoon too, where the students are maybe behaving much better than they typically do throughout the school year.
Cool. What's the business model? Are you doing like just a la carte individual course sales, or
So
what's the
that
pricing and
was
all that? Yeah.
That was the main difference between when I was only making a little bit of money on this and when I realized that certain ways to price it took it exponentially more sales. And so what I realized maybe a year and a half ago is that instead of doing just individual webinars, which there's still an option for individual webinars at $25 a webinar, you can purchase an individual webinar, or for $99, you can access all the webinars. And I do this sale about 3 times a year. And I notice I get most of my revenue just from those 3 sales. And so what I've found is that how you do your pricing dramatically impacts how successful you are, because I would say the first 5 years, I really didn't make a lot of money just on the individual $25 per webinar pricing setup. It wasn't until I started doing all the webinars for X amount that people really started flocking to the website.
Do you have like is there an access period on that? Like you get access for a year, or is it lifetime
Yes,
access? Or
well, it's a 1 year access to all the webinars.
can people take the same training 3 years later, or do they have to do new stuff all the time, or how does that work?
Sometimes they do, and then I'll have to go into the certificate and manually edit it. So I want to give LifterLMS some credit because I know you guys started out where the certificate page was kind of very rigid, and by now it's just so flexible. One of the best things you guys did was create such a versatile certificate setup, because that actually has been extremely helpful. The certificates are probably the most important after the content of the webinar itself. The certificates are the most important component to my website. And so when people are saying, hey, I watched this webinar again 3 years later, I can go in and manually edit the date to show that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any like metrics you can share, like to get a sense of impact, like how many
Yeah, sure.
students, or just anything you can
Over
share?
5,000 individual users. So over 5,000 school psychologists. And keep in mind, this is a very niche, small field. This is not like school counselors where there's 150,000 of them. There's only about 30 to 40,000 school psychologists nationwide. There's a shortage of us. And so for me to have 5,000 users and there's really only 30,000, it's like a sixth of the entire demographic, which I'm really proud of.
Wow, you've got 15% of the market or whatever.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
How do you think about you've scaled this thing and it's going great. Like,
For sure.
did you start like in Nevada or wherever? And then like, how did you think about going to multiple states? And you've also mentioned international
Yeah.
expansion. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I just started promoting on these Facebook forums where all the school psychologists talked nationally and internationally, and I would never promote it on these Facebook forums. I would just basically like share memes to these Facebook groups wherever all these school psychologists nationally were talking. And then they started following me on Facebook, and then I noticed with Instagram, I would just do follow for follow type techniques. Where I'd follow school psychologists all across the country. And it really didn't matter that I was in Nevada because this was accessible everywhere.
Wow, your ground game is strong. Like you're doing a lot
Thank you.
to get it out there.
It was very cool to see, when I did the Google Analytics and see like, oh my gosh, this isn't just in the US, this is everywhere. I couldn't believe it.
So like I mean, your program's kind of designed around the US standards, but like
Sure.
other countries and stuff accept it for credit, or
No, it's what it is. There's like a lot of school psychologists on like military, but US school psychologists like on military bases, and they say like without this, I could have never kept renewing my national certification for the US. So sometimes people have plans to go back to the US after X amount of years, and so they might be for whatever reason in a different country, but they still want to keep up their national certification here in the US, and they say my website's the best way to do that.
what just shifting gears back to the tech, what other tech is really critical to you, like software or plugins or themes or hosting that, are a really important part of your stack?
Sure. I think that videos are the next biggest thing. And I really, because there are school psychologists who are deaf and hard of hearing, and because we are so focused on helping and accommodating students with disabilities, it would be very hypocritical if I wasn't accommodating school psychologists with disabilities, such as those who are deaf and hard of hearing. So closed captions is a must for all of my webinars, and there are closed captions on there. And then on top of that, features that I would love to have is with the advanced LifterLMS videos. I've looked into it, and I've actually bought it twice, and then realized that there was a certain feature that is making it less versatile. So basically, when you're watching the video and then you click out of the screen to, for example, click on a different window, or maybe you're clicking on the PowerPoint slides, the video stops. And I've never really wanted that to happen. I want it to kind of flow. For some of my technology webinars, I say we're gonna learn Excel in real time so that you can start to crunch the numbers. But if they're clicking on Excel and then the video immediately stops, or if they're clicking on Google Sheets or Google Forms, all these different technology platforms, it kind of defeats the purpose. So one of the things I had wanted to mention in the LifterLMS Advanced videos feedback is that I love a lot of the different features. I just wish there was a way to toggle off the when you click on a different screen, the video immediately stops, because I think it actually loses a little bit of user friendliness that way. I understand the purpose. We want to make sure people watch it from start to finish. But I also think that if people don't want to watch something, they'll find a way. They'll just be on their phones with the thing on silent. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
ultimately, we want to give users some flexibility if there is a PowerPoint slides on another tab to look at it while they're listening to the video. And so I've actually bought the advanced videos and then realized it wasn't for me because of that feature. And you know how you can vote for something to be updated? I
Yeah.
put in a vote, and I don't think it did very well, but I voted to just give it a little toggle on and off. That way we can choose whether we want it to be that way or not.
I'll have to look closely at that. I thought we had that was like an option to turn on or off,
Yes,
but if
it's
that's
not.
if okay, that's good
Yeah,
feedback.
because I
Yeah.
I would love, right now my users, when they go to my webinars, I have to tell them in the notes, like, note where you left off, because it can't remember where you left off. And I know advanced videos plugin, it'll remember where you left off, which is why I really
Yeah.
want that plugin. But because of the other component of the plugin, I haven't been able to use it.
All right. Yeah, that's really good. That's totally sensible. That makes a lot of sense.
Cool,
And
thanks.
you asking for that live here definitely helps.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, maybe other people will see this and vote for it. That would be
yeah.
great. But yeah,
What are
go
what are
ahead.
you using for video hosting?
Vimeo.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
standard. That's great.
I I know that Adam is big on from WP Crafter is big on bunny.net, and so I had kind of made it on my to-do list to check that out. Maybe it's a cheaper option. Vimeo just raised their prices on us, so
Okay.
who knows? Maybe bunny.net is kind of the future. Um, and so that's one of the things on my to-do list is maybe transferring it over to bunny.net.
All right. Any other like essential tech? Like what do you put your email list on and or any other plugins you love and stuff like
So
that?
I do love how with the Lifter LMS reporting, I can just download everything to Excel and then upload it to Brevo, a email marketing. One of the things that I also wanted to kind of give some feedback on was like the memberships.
Mhm.
Sometimes people don't want the subscription of basically having to have it auto renew every time. But let's say those same people, they purchase a 1 year subscription to all the webinars on schoolsite.com. And then right before that membership is over, they repurchase a membership for another year. They renew without without it. What am I trying to say? Without their first membership expiring yet, it doesn't trigger an entire new year on all the webinars. It has to say expired before that happens, and so basically that's one of the problems I've run into. And from your tech support, they said that would be a good thing to work on in the future, but it would be extremely helpful, because there are people who pay for my membership and then they end up wondering what happens a few days later when all their webinars expire.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that is something to look at. So you're selling the membership is all access with the annual renewal?
So for me, I don't, yeah, it's an annual renewal, but every time I do a different membership. So I have like the spring break sale, that's one membership. Then I have
Oh,
the fall membership. Then I have the Black Friday membership. And then I have a new like 2025 spring break membership. So these are all different memberships. So they go from the 2024 spring break membership and then buy the 2025 spring break membership a few days before their 2024 spring break membership ends. And then it doesn't
wow.
auto renew all the um, webinars because they're not expired yet.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, we could look at that and how to smooth that out for you.
Yeah, I think anytime somebody just buys something, it should immediately kind of auto update the enrollment to the new, like, okay, this is when the year starts because they just bought it, even if they bought it while they were still enrolled in it.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Um, did you say you were manually adding people to Brevo?
Yeah, yeah, you can do that.
I was just wondering if have you heard of WP Fusion?
No, I haven't.
Um, I'm gonna check right now, but WP Fusion just excuse me automates um, passing contacts from LifterLMS to the CRMs,
Oh, cool.
and I'm wondering if Brevo is on their list.
Yeah, let me check out WP Fusion. I chose Brevo just because it's cheaper. Um, but I know it's maybe not one of the most well known of the email marketing platforms.
Well, WP Fusion integrates with like 50 or so.
It's probably on there then.
Yeah, they do have Brevo integration, so that's something to check
Awesome.
out.
Well, thank you for letting me know. That makes it a lot easier.
And they probably have a Black Friday sale coming up. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I give you guys a lot of credit that the 60% off sometimes the crazy Black Friday sales that you guys do is just always love those. Always look forward to those.
appreciate that. And I noticed you
Yeah.
do a Black Friday strategy as well.
Yeah, I mean that's how I said I got the sales uh, from like exponentially higher when I started saying you can have all the webinars for X amount. That was really what was my biggest breakthrough in business so far.
Yeah, there's a saying that I always try to remember because I've been doing running sales and doing marketing for a long time that you get tired of your marketing before your market ever does. So
All
like
right,
just keep doing
keep
sales or
hammering.
like
Yeah, keep
yeah.
hammering. Sometimes I'll do the same meme from 2 years ago, and people will forget that I even posted that meme. And so for me, it's like, oh, that's so lame to post the same joke twice. But then it gets 3 times as many likes. I'm like, oh, I guess people forgot I did it or something. I don't know.
And
And
there's
so
new
yeah,
people that come in.
yeah,
Yeah.
new people. Sometimes you have to be a little bit repetitive with some of your content, and it saves you time. That way, you're not constantly having to look for new stuff.
Well, how just kind of big picture question, how has the schoolpsych.com website and online business and education platform changed your life?
Yeah, I mean that's been the biggest component is that with my day job that I had for 10 years, it was just such a grind having to do basically an 8 to 5 every Monday through Friday and then go home and work on these passion projects at nights and weekends. So to be able to have a platform that helped me very quickly get to where my goals were, to the point where I'm no longer working my day job, I'm able to just solely focus on my passion projects and be creative. I honestly have never felt happier in my entire life, and I never knew that this could ever happen. Like I would say 5 years ago, I wasn't making that much money, so I never saw the true potential of it. Ironically, it wasn't until COVID that people started really going from these live conferences to recorded webinars, and that's when it started to take off.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What was the timeline from let's say when you got your WordPress site set up and you chose Lifter to that moment where you kind of it was really working and you were able to like how many years are we talking about there?
We're talking about like 6 years where I realized, okay, I can actually quit my job because this is making more money than my regular job. And then I, just to be on the safe side, did one more year
Yeah.
and in the schools, and that was my hardest year because by that point, my website truly was extremely time consuming. Like, there's a lot of people messaging me wanting to, you know, either collaborate with webinars or this or that. It was growing. And so it's to the point where I really needed to be able to work on this full time. So 7 years.
Nice. And you're
Yeah.
definitely no stranger to hard work, it sounds like.
Oh,
And, is it besides, like, having outside, content creators that are doing webinar content, is it just you, or do you have any team members or
so I do have team members, but they're not necessarily. I'm like pretty much the main guy who runs this thing, but I feel like it's always important to get second opinions on things, and so I've set it up in a way where there are certain school psychologists who have volunteered to help me out. They're friends of mine, and I'll go to them for either advice or just a variety of different tasks that are not very time consuming, but are very helpful to me to get second opinions. And I'll make sure that they get all the webinars for free all the time for helping volunteer.
and what motivates you, like, to do a side project and, just keep working on it, grinding for 6, 7 years? And I know it was like growing over time, but what kept you motivated to do all that?
A big foundation of that was my passion for making sure school psychologists knew the correct best practices. And I'll give you a story, which is that in the 90s, there were these reading wars. And it's like, how do we teach kids to read? There was one theory which focused on phonics, and one theory that just basically focused on whole words and context clues. And these two groups were basically constantly fighting over school district money because one had a curriculum for whole word, one had a curriculum for phonics. And in the 90s, they did all this research saying it's phonics. Phonics is much better than whole word reading. But in the 2000s, because whole word reading had such good marketing and they had so much money behind it, and it was a lot more books, so they could make a lot more money. So big corporations were very interested. Whole word reading won out in the 2000s, and a lot of children were taught to read using whole word reading, which was not the best way. Now, there are going to be kids who basically learned it and made the best of it, which is fine. But the kids who had learning disabilities needed phonics, meaning that we weren't getting at all students with this method. And as a result, a lot of kids had fallen behind. And so that was just one story that we learned about in graduate school of how important it is to know the best practices in order to give the best recommendations. And by now in 2024, a lot of those companies that teach whole word reading are going broke because finally the word is getting out that phonics is the sole way. You can't just teach kids to read based on context clues and having them guess what the word might mean. And so basically taking that one story and applying it to all different areas of school psychology. We need to teach school psychologists to recommend great interventions to teachers, great recommendations to parents of what to do at home. School psychologists are involved with so many different areas of the school that if they're very knowledgeable, they can equip so many other educators and just have an amazing impact on the children we work with.
That's awesome. That's definitely something I've seen with people who stay the course and, find success making money and is nice, but like,
Yeah.
there's got to be that passion and sense of
There's got to be
mission
a
and
why, because
yeah.
the amount of weekends in my late 20s, early 30s, and the amount of nights that I could have been out doing really fun hobbies or this or that, you have to have a why when it gets tough. And I've always had that really strong why.
Tim, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story. And I'm really proud of you. And it's
Thank you.
it's really
Thank you, Chris.
inspiring to see
Yeah.
what you've done. And the impact you're making in the world and what it's done for your life and stuff like that. So
Thanks,
keep up the
Chris.
great work. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being a shining example.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. Always happy to be on this podcast. And if you want me on in a future episode, I'd be more than happy to. Honestly, I was so honored to be on this.
Great. We'll have to do it again in like
Cool.
another couple years and
Yeah,
see
we
what
can get an
you've
update.
done.
Where am I in a few years? I would love that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim.
Absolutely. Take care, Chris.
And that's a wrap for this episode of LMS Cast. Did you enjoy that episode? Tell your friends and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And I've got a gift for you over at LifterLMS.com/gift. Go to LifterLMS.com/gift. Keep learning, keep taking action, and I'll see you in the next episode.